What's up everyone, Matt here and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about 5 things you need to start producing music right now. You could totally go out and pick up an old Casio keyboard or a Roland drum machine and start producing music that way, but these are a couple things I think would be really great to get you started working in the digital realm. So let's jump straight into it. All right, first things first, a computer. Now there's tons of different options out there. You don't have to go with the Mac, you can go with the PC if you want. And you don't have to have the most expensive, craziest new computer that's available on the market. For instance, I'm still using a 2016 MacBook Pro. You can see it back there running this massive session. That's from a trailer project. It's got over 150 tracks on it of audio and software instruments, and it's still able to handle everything without a problem. So again, I don't think you necessarily need to go out and spend a ton of money on a computer. You can get something used for $300-400. And even beyond that, if you want to use an iPad, there's tons of different options, but some type of digital device to produce music on is definitely a necessity. Now this goes hand in hand with having a computer. Obviously, you're going to need some sort of software. There's tons of free options out there. You can get GarageBand, Ableton Lite, FL Studio, Cubase. A lot of these have light versions of their software. I don't believe that you have to have the most expensive software to make a good song. Especially if you're just learning, there's nothing better than starting small and growing beyond that. If you start with GarageBand, then you can move up to Logic. You start with Ableton Lite, then you can move to the full version of Ableton Live. So I think if you're just getting into it, learn the tools of the software and take it one step at a time. A lot of people dive in, they end up spending all this money on different plugins and software instruments and effects thinking that's going to make your music better, and it's definitely not true. If you can't do it with a standard basic channel EQ, then using something more expensive like a FabFilter EQ isn't going to make your music sound any better. So start small and simple and build up from there. Okay, next thing, MIDI controller. Now, I got a couple different ones back here, but for this, let's talk about the one thing that pretty much sits on my desk that I spend 95% of the time making music on. This little guy right here. Now this is the Native Instruments M32. You don't necessarily have to get this one. Akai makes a great one, the MPK. Now, what is a MIDI controller? Because that's probably a great question. This device right here allows you to play anything that's on the computer. So let's say you have a software instrument which sounds like brass, it's horns, or you have an instrument on your computer that's a guitar. Using this, a MIDI controller, allows you to play those types of instruments. So you can play the guitar with your keyboard. You can play horns with your keyboard. So having one of these is definitely crucial, and I definitely recommend one. You can get these new for about $100, and if you go to your local music shop, I'm sure you can find one used for $29, $39. You can get something a little bit more complex, like the Complete Control, or something that has more keys, 49, 61, 88. But again, if you're just starting, you don't really know music theory, you don't know how to play the piano, having something like this is such a lifesaver. Not only that, if you're traveling, you could toss this in your backpack. You're going to your buddy's house, toss this in the backpack. It's super small. Again, I probably spend about 95% of my time playing things on this little keyboard, and mainly because it just sits on my desk. I don't have to move over to the bigger keyboard. And having all those different options of knobs and pads, while those can be really useful, sometimes they can also be really distracting. So get something small, get something cheap, get something simple. This is really going to get you started into understanding how to use a MIDI controller with your computer. Okay, next thing I recommend, headphones. Definitely a necessity. You're going to need some type of headphone, whether it's something really expensive or really cheap. If you want to use some iPod headphones, honestly, those are great. Why? Because everyone listens to music on iPod headphones. Or if you want to use AirPods, for most of my music making, I'm using AirPod Max. We can get into that another time. But you can also go and pick something up like a pair of audio-technicas. You can get these things starting at $19, $20, ranging all the way up to $150. There's lots of different options for headphones. Now, while I think it's great to have a solid pair of headphones, especially if you want to make music at night, or in the living room or something like that, or you're traveling, you can just plug them directly into the computer. Another thing that goes along with having headphones is a set of monitor speakers. You can see back here, I'm using a set of Neumann KH120s. Those things are probably 7, 8 years old at this point, and you don't need to get the craziest, most expensive monitor speakers out there, especially if you're just starting. Go pick up a pair of KRKs, get a set of Yamahas, some HS5s. There's 1,000 different options. I'll put a whole bunch of links in the description for good starting speakers. But having a good pair of speakers is definitely important so you can hear exactly what you're producing. But I don't think you need to spend a crazy amount of money if you're just getting started making music. Start learning to make music, then you can get into the ins and outs of how your mix sounds and mastering and things like that. If you're just starting out, get a pair of speakers. You got a Bluetooth speaker, plug that thing in. You don't really need anything crazy. Just get something so you can hear it as everybody else is listening to it on. Number 4 on my list, an audio interface. This here is a Native Instruments Audio 1. These things start at about $100. You can get them from Focusrite. Again, a ton of different brands out there. Presonus makes them, and they all range anywhere from $60 all the way up to the thousands, but just get something simple. This is gonna be really important, not only to connect your speakers or your headphones. Again, you can plug those things directly into the computer with the headphone jack, but what's nice about these is you're gonna get higher quality output and lower latency from your software on the computer. Now, what that means is your computer is not going to have as hard of a time processing all those different sounds and instruments for you to hear. The other cool thing about audio interfaces is you have outputs, so you can use, these are RCA outputs. You also have 1/4-inch outputs to go to monitor speakers. On the front, you'll have something like this, which is a headphone port. You plug your headphones directly in there, and it's really great to have just a dedicated volume knob for those headphones. On top, you'll have something similar to this, which is a giant volume knob to control the output to your speakers. And then you also get things, which brings me to tip number 5, a microphone. On the interface, you'll have a microphone input, so you can get sound from the microphone into your computer. Let's grab one of those real fast. All right. I have many different microphones, but this is one that I use quite often. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it. Now, you might be asking yourself, why do I need a microphone, especially if you're not a singer or doing anything with the voice? But I think microphones are super important for multiple reasons. One, let's say you have a friend who plays guitar or plays keyboard. You want to toss this thing right in front of their amplifier and record it. Boom, now you can do that. Let's say you want to add some organic Foley sounds to your track. I don't know, here's a set of AirPods. Maybe that makes a cool snare drum. Maybe that makes a cool snap. You can record all these things that you just have laying around your house and use them in your music production. So I do think having a microphone is definitely a key element and really important to music making. You don't need to go out and spend thousands of dollars on a microphone. I think when I first started making music, I used an AKG, it was like a P120 or something, and I had that microphone for probably 6 or 7 years, and it did a phenomenal job, from everything to vocals to recording instruments like saxophones and all sorts of different things. So go out and get a simple microphone that you can plug into your interface and connect to the computer. Now, all these devices, obviously there's going to be some additional costs of getting cables and cords to get everything connected right. So you're not going to want to forget those things. Now, having all these items by no means is going to make you a better musician, but having these tools definitely helps the process, especially when you don't have to think about, oh, I want to record this element. How am I going to get it into my computer? When you have those things to do it, you can keep that creative flow going and just record it. Remember that making music and learning to make music is a very time-consuming process, and it's really just about repetition. Taking time doing the same thing over and over. Learn your keyboard shortcuts. Understand how an EQ and a compressor works. Once you have all these things down, it just becomes second nature and you know how to use your tools that you have. Be patient, take your time, and have fun with it, most importantly, because that's what this is about, right? Is having fun and having a good time and taking a blank palette and creating something new, or taking a song and remixing it to something that you want to hear. There's so many different cool ways to make music, and there's different ways to make music in the industry, whether it's sound design, composing, making music for radio, hip-hop beats, DJ sets. There's a million different things, and there's no right or wrong. So have fun, enjoy making the music. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments below. Again, I'm going to throw some links in the description for some products I think are really great to get you started.